Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 4th edition of the Decaturish Twitch show. I'm your host, editor, and publisher Dan Wisenhunt. This show has been on break, on hiatus, since May. I have a kid. I did a lot of traveling. George did a lot of traveling this summer. Marjorie has a kid, did a lot of traveling. So I thought we were just going to put pause on this show for a few weeks, bring it back when school started, which it has. Yay school, yay teachers. Thank y'all so much for jumping in there and helping to get us off to a great school year. So this is sort of a return to form. There are going to be a couple of different things we do with the show going forward. The average episode length I'm going to try to keep under 45 minutes unless we have a candidate forum, which will probably go about an hour. Um, and candidate forums are going to be a big part of what we do this year. Our qualifying starts this month. We're going to have we already have a bunch of candidates in Tucker, so it's going to be a lot to discuss there. We're starting to see candidates line up in Decatur and Avondale Estates, and of course Atlanta is always a giant free-for-all because every seat on every board is up at the same time because that's just how they roll over there. So we are probably going to cover the district race for Eastlake and Kirkwood, some of the mayoral race, some of the presidential city council president race and all that. So our guests today are Marjorie Hall with DeKalb Strong. Marjorie, hello, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Doing good. Nice to be here.
And George Chidi, he is a Decaturish contributor and now publishes the Atlanta Objective, which is a Substack newsletter that you most certainly should subscribe to and support. It's where you can get all of the George Chidi you can handle every single day. It's a great read. You know, there's nobody doing the kind of journalism that George is right now. George, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm great. But hey, I still write for Decaturish.
You
You
do
should
write for
look
Decaturish.
there when I'm writing about politics and not people getting shot.
That's right.
Look for me at Decaturish.
That's right. We can do both. You can have the side hustle of Decaturish. That's fine. Like I'm glad you're getting your due. That's all I have to say. It's
I appreciate you so much.
been been overdue for you to get your due, if I may say so. So what did y'all do this summer? Who wants to go first? I'll tell you what I did this summer. So I flew to Houston in August to visit a relative. Houston is hot and has a lot of insects. So I knew that before I went and I returned, and it just reminded me that Houston is hot and has a lot of bugs. And then in July, I traveled all over the place. I saw, because we thought COVID was going away. So I went and saw all of my vaccinated friends and family. I did a tour, went to all kinds of places in Alabama. That was fun. We had a loss in our family, so that kind of got thrown in. The funeral was kind of at the end of the month, so it was kind of a crazy busy month. But needless to say, I'm glad school is back and I can get back to my normal routine. What about you, George? What'd you do this summer?
I just came back 2 days ago from Los Angeles,
Oh,
or
really?
Corona, actually. Um, by the way, since you were visiting Houston, did you have to rent a car while you were there?
No, I Ubered.
You were wise.
Yeah.
You were so very, very wise. Um, fun fact, the car rental companies, Hertz, Thrifty, and Budget are all the same company right now.
Huh.
Like, because Hertz bought the other ones with a bunch of cheap debt. And then the pandemic hit, and everybody stopped traveling. And in order to stay solvent, because they were debt ridden and couldn't borrow the money, they sold off their inventory of cars. Now that people are traveling again, they don't have enough cars. And so I stood in a line starting at 11 o'clock at night to get my car and did not leave that line until 2:30 in the morning.
Damn.
It was,
This was in L.A.
yeah, this was in LA. LAX sucks just in general. Don't go there. Fly to a different airport. But car rental companies are going to be jacked up for a while. For a while. LA is great. LA is like Atlanta on acid. It's LA is just a bigger, faster hustle of Atlanta. Like the same spirit of hustle exists. Everybody's got a side gig. Everybody's trying to find a way to make some more money. Everybody is like, and the movie thing. Like it's LA is Atlanta.
Hmm. Well, sorry, I'm welcoming our friend Trey Bliss back. We got 5 people, y'all. That's awesome. Thank y'all so much for.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Howdy ho. Thank y'all for jumping in and watching us and being with us today. It's so good to see y'all. Marjorie, what did you do this summer? I know you did some traveling because I follow you on Facebook.
Yeah, I took my kids to Yosemite.
Awesome.
So it was fantastic. My kids are 13 and 15, so they're old enough to like, well, first of all, to make them go on like forced marches, for hike long distances, and they're too big for me to carry them. Um, and they're big enough to appreciate the sequoias and all of the absolute gorgeousness that is Yosemite. We partly did the trip because we were thinking we wanted to travel, especially because my kids have been able to do so little over the past 18 months, like everybody. And we thought an outdoor vacation where we were just hiking all the time was probably the safest way to go. And Yosemite was nice this year. So as people who've traveled know, national parks have been pretty packed for that reason. There were a lot of people who thought that this is a safe way to travel. This is a good family vacation because you can do stuff outside. But in Yosemite, they were controlling access into the park to try to control crowds, since it's of course a popular place. So it was not terribly crowded. It was very hot because we were there during that heat dome. So there were days when it was 112 degrees, which I actually think is the hottest temperature I've ever personally experienced. That's really hot. It's hard to do anything. But I also experienced the rental car issue that George did. We were kind of tipped off to it. So we were told to arrive at like 6 a.m. at the rental counter with reservations to make sure that we got a car to drive from San Francisco out to Yosemite. So we were able to do that. So, and my kids saw San Francisco as well for a few days on our way back out. So San Francisco is, of course, a gorgeous city. It's about as different from LA, I think, as you can get, considering that they're not that far apart. And we really enjoyed San Francisco and all of that. So we had a good summer. It was kind of good to get out and do something a little bit before getting back and buckling back down and getting back to school.
Well, that sounds like a blast. I had no idea about the rental car thing. That is just
Well, look right
fascinating.
now. I mean, there's a shortage of cars everywhere.
Sure.
So if anybody wants to know that Subaru dealership that's behind the Quick Trip, it sticks out to me because it's the car dealership I drive by the most. The one that's right there at like Scott Boulevard, Lawrenceville
Yeah, I know
Highway.
what you're talking about.
Check out that parking lot. It's the dealership, and there's like 5 cars there. There's just a shortage generally of cars right now.
So it was interesting. So the Biden bucks came. Everybody got their Biden bucks. It was the 1,500. I mean, everybody just started getting money. Like that's what happens. Like you elect the Democrats and you just start getting money for reasons you can't explain. And so everybody on my street went to Carvana. Every other day, Carvana was showing up with a new ride, and we did too. Like we haven't bought a new car in 10 years, and our cars are falling apart. And we were like, well, let's go ahead and invest in a car finally. And it was just the damnedest thing. Like everyone we knew, practically in our circle, like went out and bought new wheels as soon as those checks hit the bank. So I guess somebody made money. I guess the car dealers did, and the people financing the debt did. So good for them. Yay, capitalism. So George, we were talking about something really interesting before we started, and at the risk of making you repeat yourself, tell us what that is. Tell us what you kind of brought to our attention that has to do with state politics and specifically the upcoming governor's race.
That's it. So I got a phone call from a political activist downstate who was concerned because he had gotten a hold of Stacey Abrams' travel schedule for the next few months. And he was calling because he was saying this does not look like the travel calendar of a candidate for statewide office in Georgia 1 year before an election. It looks like somebody who's not running for office because she's going to be running all over the country for up until late November, early December. Um, and it begs the question, if Stacey Abrams doesn't run, what exactly are we going to do? Because it's not like there's some second candidate out there that everybody's ready to rally around. Like, we've kind of put all our eggs in that Abrams basket. And I mean, we can name some names. Like, I think Michael Thurmond would be an excellent choice if you had to. Like, I'm actually a little surprised he didn't run for the Senate. Um, I think John Barrow would probably take a shot at it because what else is he doing right now? But none of them have the wattage or the fundraising capacity that Stacey Abrams does. And everybody will be wondering why she didn't run.
Why wouldn't
Um,
she run? I mean, that's my question. Well, what are your
I
thoughts on?
think I think Marjorie's got a good take on that.
I mean, my take is, and I want to be really clear that nothing that I'm saying is in any way disparaging Stacey Abrams, but if I was in her position, I don't think I would want to run. She has a national platform. She is widely celebrated as being this kind of, a real representative of a worthy and just cause. She's making money hand over fist doing that work. And that just seems like a lot more pleasant job than trying to run the state of Georgia. And I think that she would prefer, I think that she's enjoying her work and it would rather continue to do what she has been doing than run for the governorship, especially if, there's a risk that she might win.
Well,
The
that.
thing here, for,
Go ahead, George.
the thing here for me is that she hasn't said one way or another if she's running or she's not. It's just sort of an assumption. And what that does is freeze out the field. If it turns out that she's not running, she's also stalled out 5 months of fundraising for whoever is. And she's also like, it also plays havoc with the down ballot races right now because other people would choose to do different things if they knew Stacey Abrams wasn't running. Um,
That's true, but I also think you have to counter that with, the Republicans have been running as if she is running, and every time Brian Kemp opens his mouth, he's like, "That's bad," and also Stacey Abrams is associated with that bad thing. So you've had 5 months of that as everybody assumes she's going to run. So jumping into that as not being, the person that they've held up as like, Stacey Abrams is to Georgia what the Clintons are to national politics at this point, right? Like, she's just among the hardcore GOP. They're never going to vote for her. They're never going to like
yep.
her. They're going to blame her for everything. Um, if she doesn't run, that sort of takes that out of the equation, and then you have a potentially, right, somebody who doesn't have all that attached to them who could run, and you know, maybe that offsets the 5 months that she, wasn't running and locked every. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but elections are kind of weird anyway, so you never know until you see the votes get cast. But I thought that was the first. I learned two things today. I learned that it's hard to rent a car right now, and I learned that Stacey Abrams isn't making moves that a gubernatorial candidate would do. So that is really fascinating. So let me talk to you about something else that's going on. We all know that the Republican legislature passed this voter suppression law. I know they're going to call it reforms, but that's bullshit. It's getting back at the Democrats because they had the audacity to win an election in Georgia. Um, and they have started making moves to take over the Fulton County Elections Board. And so my question is, we don't really cover that board a whole lot, but we do cover DeKalb. What is their intentions towards the DeKalb Elections Board? We have talked about this over email. I've had Logan Ritchie kind of poking around at this, seeing what might be going on. Is that something that could happen in DeKalb? Because DeKalb has a lot of Democratic votes as well.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay,
And
why?
here's why. The way the law is written, it requires some member of the governing body of the county to formally make a complaint before they can do any sort of takeover stuff. There are a handful of state legislators in Fulton County that are Republicans, but there isn't a single Republican elected in DeKalb County at the legislative level or as a judge or on the county commission. And so there's no there's no one to actually file the complaint. I'm not sure they can take over the DeKalb unless a Democrat decides to cross party lines to demand an investigation of something. Or I don't think you've got a shot at it here.
Although I mean, I agree with George, but I would say I think the answer is it would have to be a pretty egregious situation in order for that to transpire. And I'm not completely discounting something totally egregious happening. Although I think there have been improvements to the Board of Elections that hopefully hopefully that we don't come to that we don't have a situation arising that would merit that.
Right. I agree. Like, hey, look, the DeKalb Board of Elections has not always been perfect, he says. Like, I have been standing outside of the building screaming terrible things, things that would get me arrested if they were actually being heard. But I wasn't being heard because it was the DeKalb Board of Elections. Suffice to say, by the way,
Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Sarah Amos.
That freaked me out because I thought that was actually someone walking behind me in my house for a second. And I was like, what's going on? But it's Sarah. Hey, Sarah. So,
Yeah, that's where I am.
gotcha. So we're not gonna have state stuff this year. I don't think we're gonna have county stuff. We are gonna have some local elections, and the local election that is the most interesting to me right now is what's all right. So Jim Hutter, before we get to that, says George is right on the law, and this person J.M. Hutter says, and I have a really good source who says Nancy J is a legislative partner, albeit hella partisan, so less likely to be crazy pants on the BRE. I don't think anybody disagreed with Nancy being on the BRE.
No, no one.
I think
I think,
every
well, especially the fact that they tried to nominate Paul Maynor.
yeah right like
I actually personally, I have some, I disagree with Nancy on like everything, but I kind of like her anyway, which I feel like a lot of Democrats in DeKalb County feel that way about
I
Nancy.
think every
Very
Democrat
much so. I call her friend.
right.
Yeah. But you know, they nominated someone like Paul Maynor, which, you know, is he was so bad. I'm not even going to go into how bad Paul Maynor
We
is.
all know. We know.
You know, the judge rejected that nomination. So then, you know, when instead Nancy is offered up, it's like, oh, that's so eminently reasonable compared to
Right.
what you were just saying. So yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, she's interested in governing. Now, that might, be different than what your interest is, but she's gonna govern. She always picks up the phone. Even if it's not in her district, she picks up the phone. I mean, that's
Very
kind of
much so.
that's kind of her talent is being able to be connected and be accessible, which is really half the battle. So yeah, I agree with that, Mr. Hutter or Mrs. Hutter. I agree that that was definitely a sane and reasonable choice. So, shifting gears just a little bit, we got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to talk about Tucker a little bit because Tucker, for some reason, it escaped me that they had term limits. I just assume that nobody has term limits because that's what I'm used to seeing. But Tucker actually has them and tried to get them changed. So now, before qualifying has even started, there are just candidates coming out of the woodwork to run, including a candidate who's running against Frank Allman. So, and I think George aptly pointed out in an email thread I was on, I think Frank is really like the last top level Republican in DeKalb County. A lot of people don't realize that about Frank because he doesn't really advertise that a whole lot, but he is a Republican, and he is probably the last high ranking Republican we have in DeKalb County. So, TuckerObserver.com is our other website. Go there. You're going to find Logan Ritchie has done fine work, as always, writing about these candidates. She's going to be heavily in the thick of our elections coverage there. What are your thoughts on what's going on in Tucker right now?
Well, I mean, I'll jump in, I mean, I'll caveat this with saying I really like the inaugural city council of Tucker. It was good folks, and even Frank, as as a Republican, again, I like him. I think that he was interested in good governance. He was not the kind of, when these new cities get created, often the initial mayor it's done as a vanity project for the people who want to run the city. That really wasn't the case in Tucker. But all of that said, and I know that they wanted to get rid of the term limits because they felt like they had a good thing going. They'd really gelled as a team, and they wanted to keep up with that. But so I while I feel with them in their disappointment, we live in a democracy, and I think a little bit of churn in local governance is really important. We can't have kind of government by click where everybody is already on the same page. They have a shorthand, they work really well together, so they just run the city. I think some regular challenges and some turnover can be a healthy thing. So I'm very heartened to see that a lot of people want to run. That's a sign of civic health. A lot of unopposed. We were talking before we went live about, unopposed races are a bad thing. So it's good that a lot of people want to run, and it's a sign of good civic health. And I wish for the best for Tucker. I hope that people get engaged and pay attention and elect refresh this team in a way that is good for the city of Tucker. And now Frank Alman is not term limited out. He has longer term limits than the city council people. So some city council people are term limited out, but he's actually not. So he could get reelected, but he has some opposition. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Trey, I don't know. I don't think there are any crazy candidates to join the Tucker. I haven't seen any that
Nobody's nuts.
Yeah, radiate QAnon or anything. So they all seem like eminently qualified people who just have an interest in public service, which is great. Like, I am pretty impressed actually at the depth of that bench over there in Tucker. They've got a lot of solid people.
I am not surprised though.
No,
Like,
I wouldn't say I'm surprised.
Like, Tucker is, and I've said this before, they are militantly middle class and aggressively community minded. Like, they'll fight you over it. I've never seen a community as tight as that one, with the possible exception of the Pine Lake where I live. Like, they are about making friends and making the streets clean and keeping the school running, and door knocking when somebody's sick, and it's just a great place to live. There is a partisan element to what's going on. I'm going to piss off John Jackson, who runs the Democratic Party in DeKalb. He's a friend, but I can't make some full-throated, yeah, we need to get all the Republicans out of Tucker thing, because the Republicans and the Democrats in Tucker are all about Tucker. They don't actually give a damn about politics. Like, the way that's the last bastion of this too. Like, it is Tucker and then maybe DeKalb and then maybe Georgia. They don't care. Like, and it's a good thing. Like, all the people running are qualified. Like, there's of the candidates who were going to try to take out Frank Alman, who I put in the Nancy Jester category of sane Republicans. Robin Biro he's
the only other candidate that's declared.
Yeah, Biro is, and I've known him for years. He's a former soldier. He's gay. He was discharged for being gay, like before the don't ask, don't tell was repealed. It turned into a cause celeb for him. I believe he was reinstated. Um, and he's been on the talk show circuit for years. He's also been very active in democratic politics and in LGBTQ politics at the state level. So he's got a lot of backing. Like, the thing is, he's not. If he's homegrown Tucker, that's news to me. And I actually thought he was living in Texas for a little while. Like, if he's got Tucker roots, he's competitive. And I think
I don't actually know the answer to that question. I know that I have seen carpetbagger attacks launched at him, saying that he's not really Tucker.
Well, I think where some of this, they have yet to. So Tucker has done some things that I think are partisan. Maybe not to the extent that Ron DeSantis or anybody would be partisan, but Tucker won't do a non-discrimination ordinance. Pretty much every other city around them has adopted one. Do you know? They sorry, I got distracted by a question. They have not done one. Mask mandate. Every other city adopted one.
Yeah.
Tucker basically said, no, we're not going to do that. Streaming meetings. Every other city is like, well, we got to keep streaming meetings. And Tucker's like, nah, we're just going to, they say they're reconsidering it, which is great. But, they act like it's a very complicated technical thing to overcome when it's really not. They have well-paid communications people that are capable of doing that. So I agree in a general sense that it's kind of a nonpartisan city, but I do think on some key issues that might be driving this election, particularly the non-discrimination ordinance, there has been some partisan stuff going on. So we have to keep that in mind. What the question for me is, how big of a deal is the NDO to people in Tucker? I don't know that it is. I know there are some people who are really vocal around it, but I don't know that it qualifies yet as a full-fledged movement or electoral block. I mean, maybe a good candidate like this gentleman can turn it into one. I don't know. I don't know where that's going, but I think you're from the 50,000 foot view. What y'all are saying is spot on. I think there's some things going on a little closer to the ground
right.
that might affect it. So we're about 2 minutes from the close of our show. I did promise we were going to try to respect everyone's time. But Trey Bliss has a very provocative question that we'll end the show with, which is, do you support vaccine passports? I'm going to let y'all jump into that I'll see which way the wind's blowing.
I want to see everybody get vaccinated. And I think employers and business owners have an absolute right to deny service to someone or deny employment to someone over their vaccination status. And there are 2 Supreme Court rulings that say as much. Now, if you want to call that a vaccine passport program, okay. Like, what I'm saying is, it's as the French president said, it's your turn to take the hit. Like, we're doing the right things by getting vaccinated. If you're not willing to get vaccinated, then you're the one who needs to have your life restricted, not us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say just, a good general principle is that persuasion is better than coercion in a democratic society, always. So given that caveat, and that I think a lot of the unvaccinated are not as are not as people think they are. That yes, there are kind of stubborn anti-vaxxers, but there are also actually still a lot of people who are kind of waffly in the middle that actually are persuadable. So I do think that we should work as hard to persuade people and not be coercive. That said, and also the federal government doesn't, I'm not sure there are legal mechanisms there to really, require people to get vaccinated. But if if places want to say you can't travel on a plane without a passport, if employer or without a vaccine, if employers want to say, I saw that Tyson Foods is going to require all of their employees to get vaccinated, which is very important. Meat packing facilities were a big route of exposure. I think teachers, I think school systems should mandate teachers get vaccinated to help us keep the schools open. So I think that mandates are reasonable in a lot of circumstances, and a lot of employers should consider whether they're appropriate. But at the same time, that really, when it comes down to it, persuasion is still better. And I hope that we can do everything we can to persuade people. You look at the data right now, vaccines are really protecting communities from the worst of this surge that we're seeing right now. And people really should get vaccinated for their own safety and for the health of their communities.
Amen. I agree with all of that. I definitely think that, Emory Healthcare came out today and said, all of our employees had to get vaccinated. And there was immediately a comment on Decaturish who said, I'm leaving Emory Healthcare right now because of this policy. And my response was like, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Like, just go. Like, if you're in healthcare or you're in education and you don't want to get the vaccine and your employer's telling you to get one, then GTFO. I mean, I think every employer has the right and definitely should. My favorite, I'm not going to name names, but there is a law firm that said their attorneys have to get vaccinated, and if they don't, their key cards will not work. So they're literally going to change the locks on the attorneys at this law firm. I love that. Like, that's like the very classic lawyer thing to do. Well, this has been a great show. We had really good viewership for this. I was surprised we didn't promote it that much. So thank you to everyone who jumped in and joined our show. Our guests today are Marjorie Hall and George Chidi. Thank you both so much for your time. I hope you've got a great weekend planned. Everybody, get your vaccine. I don't know what to tell you. I assume if you're watching this show, you probably already have it. But if by some chance you don't, please go get your vaccine. And don't get your information about the vaccine from us or from, the news. Like, go get it from your doctor. Go talk to your personal physician and ask them what they think, and then make a decision that is correct for you. We will be back next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. I will try to line up a good guest. I would like to talk about the COVID situation in a little more depth. Until then, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye-bye.